everyone, Dr. Ashley here. Today we are going to talk about one aspect of humans that I believe is a requirement for humans to live to their fullest potential, and that includes their fullest health potential, and how you can take this one aspect and apply it to your health efforts to make things more interesting and fun. So stick around to find out what that one thing is and how I recommend you apply it to your life and your health. So what got me thinking about this topic is that if you look at mine and my husband's YouTube channel feeds, they're very different because we have very different interests in general. But one of the channels that he watches frequently is Adam Savage's Tested, where Adam Savage from Mythbusters just goes and builds things, creates things, not for the purpose of being on a movie set or to test it in a Mythbusters type way, just because he has this idea in his mind. And so the other day I was walking by and my husband was watching it, and all Adam was doing was just drilling a bunch of holes into this metal chair. And this video was an hour long, and I ended up watching the entire thing with my husband, just watching him drill holes and analyze and kind of figure out where he's going to put the holes and what size he's going to put the holes in, all of this stuff. And it's so interesting just how drawn into I got with that one thing. And during this video, Adam kind of had a little montage where he talked about why do this? Why do anything that he does? And really it was because he just wanted to create something. He had this vision in his mind and he wanted to create just because. And I love that. And I think that that is a fundamental part of being human. If you look at us versus other species out there, animals are driven to create things to be a tool to help with survival. But we are in such a wonderful position where we don't necessarily have to do that. We truly have this aspect, this piece of us, this human piece of us that allows us to be creative. And I really do believe that creativity is one thing that we need as humans to thrive. So what does creativity do for us? So another kind of story that got me thinking about this creativity was that my husband and I are organizing our garage. And a piece of that was building some shelves. My husband loves to build. He's very much like Adam Savage. He likes to create with his hands. He likes to do things. I love to create with my brain and my mind. I am much more of a thinker. I like to sit down on my computer and write out my thoughts and help teach in more creative ways. But my husband is much more putting his hands onto a project and creating something from it. So at the end of this several weekend long journey, he had created these shelving units that we had measured out to like fit our totes and everything. And he gets such a good dopamine hit from looking at his creation, from the process of creation, from figuring things out and trying new things and measuring and building and showing our son how to build. That gives him such a good level of dopamine, and it feels very pleasurable. Me, on the other hand, I don't get that much of a dopamine hit from him building those shelves, even if I were to help him, which I did. I hand him things and, help write down the measurements, but I don't do much outside of that. That doesn't give me a very big dopamine hit. Where I get my dopamine hit is at the end. So the shelves are there, but then we get to organize everything. And this level of seeing everything on the shelves off of the ground and organized in a way that my brain really works. So we have all of our camping equipment together. We have all of our car equipment together. We have all of this, each category built up on these shelves gives me such a dopamine hit. And it's this process of kind of going through and figuring out how my brain works and how we can organize things that feels really good. And now that it's done, every time both of us walk by, we get to look at the product of our creativity, the product of doing something, and the product of going through and completing a project, even if it doesn't measure up to what we kind of had envisioned initially in our mind. Just now that we took that idea and went with it and adapted to it, even now just seeing it gives us like repeated hits of dopamine, which is fabulous. So first, creativity is important for humans in general. And you might sit there and say, no, I'm not a creative person. I'm not artsy. I can't build things with my hands. I can't think about things in a different way. But I would challenge you to expand your definition of creativity. And that is just the act of creating something, just the act of taking an idea that's in your brain and trying to morph it and form it into something new. And it doesn't have to be art. It doesn't have to be science. It can be whatever category you want it to be. And as I've mentioned, I believe it is a fundamental part of being human. You don't see this nearly as much in other animal species. Yes, you may see some of it in primates, not to the same level that you will see it in humans. And think of how advanced we are because of that creativity. Like in any field, there had to be somebody thinking, okay, what's the next step? What is the next beyond this level? And we just keep advancing. And that brings me to this idea that it is our obligation to find what our desires are and apply creativity to it to try to continue to advance humans. However you want to think about it, we evolved or we were created, we have a master creator. Somehow we have been given these internal desires and this internal creativity, and it is our duty to use them to help other humans, to help ourselves, and to meet that fundamental need that humans have of creation. So a great way to kind of access that internal desire and creativity within you is to just ask yourself, what are you really passionate about? What are you really into? What could you nerd out on or spend hours on a day off doing? Like if you look at YouTube, there are people passionate about so many crazy things. Another channel that my husband watches is just a guy who talks about shoes. Again, these are not shoes that I am interested in purchasing at all, but he is so into it and knows so much about it and has so many thoughts about the way shoes are made and the quality of shoes that it's just hard to walk away from when he starts talking. And so again, it doesn't have to be in this very artsy realm. If that's you, that's great. I love that. That is not me. I'm much more health and biology and science, and I love the way the body works, and I love applying the mind and the body connection together and thinking of it in new creative ways to help my people feel better. Another great example is like if you're really into like sports or games of some sort. I mean, there are such a huge following for these role-playing games, and you just see how creative and into it the people who are involved in it are. And you might say like, well, how in the world is that advancing humans? People obviously get value from it because they have such a large following, and it helps create a story in people's brains that they get interested and follow. So you don't have to create the next big invention. You just have to create what feels right in your heart. And as long as you're following that path, you will provide value to not only yourself, which we'll talk about what that value shows up in, but also value to others in the world. So that is your duty. And the value that we get is through that dopamine hit, that dopamine release. because our bodies crave that process of going through creating something and seeing what the end result turns out to be, which I mentioned is usually not exactly what we first envisioned in our mind, but that's part of the creative process, and just to kind of see what we can create as a human. And that hit of dopamine is, I think, so important today because we live in a society where it's so easy to get unnatural and very high levels of dopamine that leave our body craving more. We kind of go through withdrawal of it because there's so many false pleasures. We have that in the form of processed foods. We have it in alcohol. We have it in drugs. We have it in gambling. We have it in so many different forms today that getting back to the way our brains are set up to have this kind of continuous, like, low level releases of dopamine, again, just like me walking by my organized shelves in the garage, that I can continue getting that repeated hits of dopamine, and that feels so good. It feels so naturally pleasurable. It has no negative consequences. It's not going to contribute to insulin and weight gain. It's not going to harm my liver or my kidneys or my wallet or anything like that. It is just a pure form of feel-good hormones released in my brain with no negative consequences. And so that is the beauty. That is how it benefits you. And you also get the pleasure of helping others. So by my husband building those shelves, it helped me get my natural dopamine release through being able to organize with them. And now he also gets the pleasure of seeing what he created and having this wide open garage that he can do other projects in. All right, so that was point number one, that humans need this act of creation, this act of adding themselves to the world in some way, because that is the way we are designed. Number two is that you can apply creativity to your health efforts to make things more enjoyable and fun. Whenever people start off on making big health changes or a health journey, whether that be food or exercise or sleep or stress management, it never seems exciting. Maybe it does, like, right at the beginning, but it always kind of like waxes and wanes and falls off. But can you continually apply this principle of, okay, well, how can I think about it differently or come about it differently or make it more enjoyable in any way so that you continue to get that dopamine hit, so that you can continue to move forward to try to get to your exercise goals? The two biggest health areas that come to mind for me are food and exercise, because those often don't seem like very fun changes to make for a lot of people. Exercise is a great one. I think when a lot of us think of exercise and movement, they think of going to the gym and being on the treadmill for hours, or lifting heavy weights in front of a bunch of buff people. That's very intimidating. But instead, I really want movement to be joyful. How can it be more fun? And again, we live in a day and age where there's so much opportunities for us to do this. Like, just go look at all the exercise options on YouTube. Look at all those videos of a way to move your body in a different way than you do on a standard basis. If you look at humans, we are so oddly shaped, right? We have these arms that do these crazy movements that can go back behind us and reach and lift and do all of these things. We have even, like, our lower body can go for these lateral and backwards and 45-degree angle movements. We're not built like elephants, we're not built just to be walking forward and back and sitting. We're made to move and twist and reach and pull and do all of these crazy things. So the more creative you can get with your workouts, the more fun it is for your brain. So look at other options of, not just the standard weightlifting or the standard walking, but would you be interested in dance, yoga, Pilates, more functional training movements, along the lines of CrossFit, but it doesn't need to be quite as intense if that's not what you're looking for. but that is a great way to bring creativity into your health life. Next, let's talk about food. I 100% believe that you and I can both have very healthy diets that look very different on a day-to-day basis. There are foods that I strongly recommend that you get out of your diet, and that's the highly processed foods. And then incorporate as many of the non-processed foods as possible. And if you think about like the variety that entails, it is absurd. And the amount of spices and the amount of meats and grains and vegetables and fruits, your diet could look so different from mine. And I think that is a really wonderful and beautiful thing, as long as you don't let it overwhelm yourself. Look at it as a challenge of, okay, well, how can I make this really healthy meal taste absolutely delicious for me and my family? And just be open to this process of trial and error, because that is what the act of creating is, right? You go through like, okay, well, what if we tried this and it doesn't work, or a part of it worked? That's even better. Like a piece of it worked, but the other piece didn't. So let's drop the other piece. And then what do we need to do to create on top of this foundation that we've already built? That really is what finding your health is. And I think so many of the patients that I work with and the people that I work with come in wanting this blueprint, this beautiful laid out map of exactly what you need to do to get your body to the weight you want, to build the muscle that you want, to get the GI health that you want, to get the improvement in mood that you want. And we are beautifully unique humans that work in different ways, that have slightly different gut microbiome, slightly different genetics, slightly different metabolism. And health is this journey that you have a rough idea where the destination is, but you don't have an exact map of how that route looks, and you have to make it up on your own. And that includes failure. That includes having to backtrack a little bit just to find your way around. And I think if more people came at it from this idea of, I'm going to fail, this is going to take multiple tweaks, but I will get there in the end, this process is so much more enjoyable and so much less frustrating than the idea of, okay, I'm going to follow one diet guide and get the body that I want, because that usually doesn't work. Other health areas that I think you really can get more creative in is your social gatherings and your scheduling. So you have a group of friends and you often go out and eat, usually pretty unhealthy, maybe include some drinks in there. You always feel bad afterwards. Could you change it up? Could you ask to go do something like go on a walk or a bike ride or a hike, or go do a healthy cooking class, or bring everybody over to try out new recipes, new healthy recipes? Like, change it up there. Again, your brain gets that hit of dopamine from doing that, plus a hit of dopamine from hanging out with people that you truly enjoy. And you have no negative consequences of the slight headache or hangover that you have from the alcohol, from the yucky feeling that you have from eating all that greasy, fried, or processed foods. Same with date nights. Could you do something with your partner that is more health oriented that both of you think would be fun? That's a great way to do it. And then scheduling. I work with so many parents, especially moms, and finding time amidst the really busy schedule of their kids and their partners and all of the social activities plus schoolwork that they have to do. Finding time to exercise or cook or things like that is very hard. So how can you creatively look at it and say, okay, what's an easier way to do this? Can I get everybody involved in cooking once a week and do big batch cooking so that my children can learn how to cook healthy for themselves? So win-win. And we get to eat healthy throughout the week. Also, is there ways that if I'm taking my kids to sports practices or activities? Is there a way I could squeeze in a workout or a meditation or something that I really want to do for myself while they're participating in their activity? So just coming at it from, there is no one right way to do this. You get to apply what your wants are in this situation and creatively fit them in. Coming at it from a standpoint of, I get to do this. I get to create this full life for my family and myself, instead of, I have a list of 20 things that I need to do for my family alone. How in the world am I going to add the 5 things in that I want to do for myself? Come at it with this like, okay, how can I? Brain, I'm challenging you to creatively schedule everything in here so we can get things done. And understand that you're going to try it and maybe it's going to fail. So you're going to tweak it. And then maybe it's going to work better, but you think you can get it even better. So you're going to tweak it, and you're going to continue this creative process working towards this ideal of what you have at the end. But just understand each increment that you get closer is better for your health and gives you that dopamine hit of accomplishment. So that is how I want you to apply creativity to your health efforts. All right, so what do you do from here? I want you to give yourself just a little bit of time, whether that's driving in the car, whether it's before you go to bed at night, if you like to journal or meditate, just kind of mull this over. But what are, like, if you could create anything, if you could do anything, what are you passionate about? What are your deepest desires? What if there were no barriers? What would you pursue? I just want you to sit with the idea of, okay, what if I went after it? And how would I do it? And how would I incorporate that into my life right now? And how would I make time for it? Just play around with that idea and think about, maybe you do reserve some time, a short amount of time each week to maybe going forward with it. Whether that's, I want to pick up a new sport, I want to start playing Dungeons and Dragons, I have this idea of something that I want to create, or I have an idea for a book that I want to write. What if you just said, okay, I'm not attached to the outcome, and 1 hour a week I get to spend trying to pursue it? Because I think it's so important for your overall well-being as a human. So that's number 1, is consider what your desires are and play around with the idea of pursuing them creatively. And number 2 is look at what area in your health you feel like you're struggling with the most, and start to brainstorm some possible solutions of how to solve that. And think outside the box. Think outside of any advice that I've given you, any advice that you've read on the internet, any advice that other doctors have given you, and just say, okay, well, how am I going to make that work for me? So you want to apply creativity to your desires in your life, and you also want to figure out where you're struggling with your health and see how you could creatively solve that problem. So get to work on those 2 things. All right. Finally, I just wanted to let you know that I understand that it can be hard to be creative when you're feeling stressed out all the time. So if you are somebody who's feeling constantly stressed, you're kind of feeling wired and tired, make sure to go download my free guide on 5 techniques to lower stress and cortisol in minutes. You can find it on the website. And I just wanted to give you a heads up that I will be coming out with my first ebook called The Insulin Reset. So it is all of my top recommendations for getting your insulin in order, which will have so many benefits on your overall health, including weight loss, improved mood and less irritability, better sleep, better GI health, and a slew of other health benefits. So just make sure to keep an eye out on all of my socials for when that is released. Until next time, we will see you.